We are facing a crisis, but I'm not talking about the NHS or Brexit. I've been speaking to people in our prison services, and we are sitting on a toxic time bomb of understaffing, under-resourcing and overcrowding. Inmates are sinking under a growing wave of violence, rampant drug abuse and mental illness. I've seen the effects firsthand, and the figures prove it. 2016 had the highest number of prison suicides on record. Prison violence is at an all-time high, with recent riots in Birmingham, where these pictures are from, and also Bedford and Lewis. There are 8,000 fewer prison officers than 7 years ago, creating a recruitment and retention crisis that exacerbates already terrible conditions. Only the most barbaric could think it wise to allow such medieval conditions. It was Winston Churchill who said that the stored-up strength of a nation is how it treats its prisoners. If that's the case, then right now, things are looking pretty bleak for ours.
Afua, what is the purpose of prison?
The purpose of prison is twofold: punishment and rehabilitation.
Can everyone be rehabilitated?
Everyone should have the attempt to rehabilitate them.
People such as Ian Huntley?
Can I put a question to you?
Well, it's a classic
Ian Huntley,
trick that you can't answer a question
I think it's unfair to use Ian Huntley as an example because
right.
the average prison sentence is 9 months. The average prisoner is not Ian Brady or Ian Huntley. It's somebody who's committed a drug-related and often non-violent offence who gets a short sentence. So we can talk about the extremes, people who I don't think should or will ever be released, and I would agree with you on that.
Right.
But you can't talk about the condition of the majority of prisoners by taking the most extreme examples of people who, by the way, we're not facing any prospect that they will be released, and no one's arguing for it.
But what I'm drilling down to is why prisons are put on earth. And I would suggest that the prisons are put on earth to, in most instances, to protect us, the people who are outside the jail, from people who need to be in the jail, to punish people who have chosen to break the laws, and where possible, rehabilitation, where possible.
I agree.
But that's a bit frightening. But the idea that necessarily we can rehabilitate all is, I think, a little bit far-fetched.
I'm not saying we should expect necessarily to
walk me through how the rehabilitation system will work. Who qualifies and who doesn't?
At the moment, it's almost impossible to rehabilitate, not because it's not the idea, but just because of the resource issues. So we have a situation, if we talk about victims, because I think we share that concern, as you said, people outside the prisons, we deserve to be safe. The reoffending rate at the moment is 45%. Our prisons are failing us, people who do not want to be victims of crime, because we have potentially dangerous people captive. We have the ability to train them to prevent them reoffending. People who are going to be released.
Dangerous people out?
We have people in prison who are going to be released. Do you accept that?
Of course.
Right. When we're releasing them, 45% of them are reoffending. That is not in any of our interests.
You're talking about the criminals like they're the victims. One of your phrases before, you said they're sinking under a wave of violence. You know, to be honest, I don't care about murderers and rapists and paedophiles. I don't care what happens to them. Lock them up for as long as you possibly can for me. What I care about is the people they've hurt. And, you know, we live in a society now where the criminal justice system is biased towards the perpetrators of crime and not the victims of crime. You know, there are lots of organisations...
What's your evidence for saying that, Carol? On what basis do you say
the government advisor 2 years ago said exactly that. She said that there were the poor relations.
What's a senior government advisor?
Well,
tell me, that could be
you want the name?
I mean, no,
senior government advisor said that there were the poor relations. There are lots of state-run help for criminals. There's not much state-run help for victims. And can you imagine what it must be like if you're a member of a family and someone has murdered your child or raped your daughter, and you find that the guy who's done it is living in a jail where he's getting drugs sent in, he's ordering stuff on Amazon, he's got access to computers, he's making Skype phone calls to his family.
I mean, I've been in quite a lot of prisons. I always remember going to the first one to make a film and just being absolutely shocked by how awful the experience was. And if we can, and in those days, this was 20, 30 years ago, and I remember people saying, if you get to 40,000 people in prison in this country, we won't cope. Well, we're now at 85,000 or something, and we haven't really built any more prisons. Now, it's like all things in society, you've got to take choices. You either got to do something about the prisons, or you've got to do something about the numbers that are going in there. And of course, the other thing you discover is probably half are drugs related.
Yeah.
And we've clearly... which we can discuss on another occasion, we've clearly followed the wrong drugs policy for years in this country. And because of it, drugs are dominating the prisons. But at some stage, we can't just keep putting more and more people in without doing something about the buildings.
So let's build more prisons and let's get more security guards.
Come on, Carol. We've got double the prison population has doubled in.
But these guys make a choice to re-offend when they go. When they're in prison, they have access to rehab.
People in prison, and we don't have enough staff to
look
after the
so where should murderers go, Rachel? Where should rapists go? Where should paedophiles go?
No, but we are putting the wrong sorts of... For example, women who don't pay their TV licenses and serving short prison service.
There's about 4,000 women in prison all over Britain.
Incredibly careful about putting women in prison because we already know what happens to their families and their children go to foster care and then the children offend, and it's an absolute hiding to nothing.
I saw some interesting statistics that says, this isn't exact figures, but something like 15% of the kids of lawyers become lawyers, 20% of the kids of journalists become journalists, 60% of the sons of prisoners become prisoners.
Yeah.
And that's the real problem. And it's all about it's working with them, their families, and all the things that you've got to do.
Massive amounts of money are spent on rehabilitation, and it's not
no massive amount of money isn't spent on rehabilitation. No,
there are financial and support programs for when they come out. They have trauma services, they have mental health services.
Have you been inside a prison, Carol?
No.
Right, I've been inside a number of prisons. The last prison I went inside, the governor showed me the education wing, where they had money to build an education wing to help rehabilitation, which they've been forced to use to build extra cells. Okay. Those prisons are overcrowded by the prison service's own guidelines about how many prisons they should be in cells. Prisoners are in their cells 23 hours out of 24. Okay. Now, it's not because I think that we should treat prisoners like royalty and that they should be sitting around ordering things on Amazon. Chris Grayling actually removed things like the right to bring books into prison, and Michael Gove reversed that, recognising
can we just
damaging us. And just finally, why do you always talk about rapists, paedophiles and murderers?
Because
the majority of people in prison
you have to do something really bad these days to get put in prison, but just prison. Just have a look.
Party time! Party time! Get this one as well. Oh my goodness! Stand by the window, man. Stand up! You gotta stand up. Yo, stand up.
Go like a bomb. Put your lips to it. That's it. He done it. Soldier.
So when you talk to me about prison being really hard and really difficult and really awful, that's not that awful. You're shouting
if
party
you think
time.
I'm celebrating people having access to drugs in prison,
what do you think
you couldn't be more wrong.
I'm saying, why have they got drugs?
Because we have a prison officer recruitment and retention crisis. We have understaffing, overcrowding. And if you're sitting in a cell for 23 hours out of 24, do you think you're finding constructive things to do with your time? No. You're getting involved in violence, which has risen 30%.
We just got to get a couple of points out, if I can just interrupt. Just so the prison service have said the challenges in our prisons are long-standing and won't be solved overnight, but the Justice Secretary is committed to making sure our prisons are stable. The Justice Secretary on the subject of violence says this is unacceptable, and I'm clear that safety in prisons is fundamental to the proper functioning of our justice system. And I think somebody might have said that half of people inside are for drugs convictions. I'm told that's actually 15%. So just come back to you, Greg. You said, I find this fascinating.
No, I didn't say drugs convictions, I said drugs.
Drugs.
You've got it, they're drugs related.
Drugs related.
Lots of people are in there for conviction for stealing and all the rest of it to get money for drugs.
Okay. What I find fascinating is you said, and that was a shocking statistic, 60%. So you said we should be working with those prisoners, right?
Yes.
Some sort of programs. So let me get this straight. So the viewers watching this now, who are law-abiding citizens, who are struggling for their sons and daughters to actually get a leg up, we won't do anything for. But if you're a prisoner, we will have a programme that will come out, we will spend money on you because you've chosen to break the law. Just explain to me how that works.
You can't say that with a straight face, like it's an either-or.
Like, you're the person who sits here every week not wanting to spend any money on anything because you don't want to put taxes up.
You're dead right, I'll bring them
down. The real point is, in the end, we've got to look and say, look, society needs protection from some of these people. You've got to look at then what's the relationship with their children and how do you do something about that. And there's no point saying, well, it would be terrible to spend money on that. Actually, if that makes it a safer society, that's what you've got to do.
But if prison is so awful, how come that within a year of being released, 2,000 serious offences, and by serious we mean murder, we mean rape, serious offences are committed by people who've been put away, and they do that in their first year when they get out. If prison is so bad, why are they so keen to go back?
Carol, panel, we must take a jail break.